Hey everyone, back again. This time around, video about European sovereignty. There's been a lot of scrutiny right now about Microsoft licensing models, Microsoft itself being a US tech firm, and the way they're being viewed in Europe, maybe even outside of Europe as well. This has been going on for quite a while, so we all know about the regulatory issues Microsoft has had in Europe already. Looking, for instance, at the CISP group, cloud group, the UK Competition and Markets Authority. A lot of regulatory bodies and customers are asking, is Microsoft licensing fair? Is the company's dominance harming competition? Let's today explore a little bit on how sovereignty, competition, and licensing are colliding and what it means for your organization, basically. So let me share some slides. So what happened in the past? So CISP licensing concessions were given based on some legislation or regulation rather in Europe. Microsoft took note of this, made some adjustments. So Windows Server and SQL Server licensing was made more easy, transparent for other cloud hosters aside from Microsoft Azure. They did, however, omit AWS, Google Cloud, I think Alibaba, and other big cloud infrastructures. So they gave a lot more opportunity to basically cloud hosting providers or outsourcers or all of the above. They created a new program called the CSP-Hoster program as well, which would make it easier for hosting providers to purchase Windows Server and SQL Server licenses and use those for the end customers, but also the rights for customers to have increased benefits from the software assurance that they were already buying. For Windows Server, for instance, they gave the virtualization flexibility to also use those if you have software assurance within your third-party hosted data centers. This is supported the EU digital sovereignty. Critics cited this as symbolic but not structural, so there's still a lot of scrutiny there. So this agreement fits into a bigger story. European digital sovereignty. Policymakers really want customers to run Microsoft workloads on their choice of infrastructure, not just Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google Cloud, but introducing other parties as well. You see some smaller cloud parties popping up across Europe, but there's no sizable alternative. But there is the scrutiny and the enlarged sense of big tech from the US being a threat to the EU. So this is something that Microsoft is taking at heart. By introducing CSP-Hoster, for instance, they think they have added a new program that might benefit maybe keep quiet the current hosting providers within Europe. But while they're conceding ground, it also raises a lot of questions, because will it actually lower cost? Will it scale in a certain way? I don't think that is per se true. There's also the regulatory thing about tying Microsoft Teams into M365, for instance. What did Microsoft do? They took out the Microsoft Teams license from M365 licenses and all Office 365 suites, but they added it as a standalone at a very higher price. So pricing for M365 went down with a euro or a dollar or something, and they added a single Teams license at €5. So no, cost is not going down, it's going up. Because if you need to purchase Teams separately from the rest of the M365 suite, you're all of a sudden paying a premium. So for customers, the message is clear. Licensing is no longer just about price, it's about sovereignty, choice, and who controls the infrastructure where your workload runs. yeah, so licensing has been circling around the EU regulators for a while now. In the UK as well, the Competition and Markets Authority that I just talked about flagged Microsoft licensing as a barrier for fair competition with things like Slack against Teams. They might classify Microsoft even as having a strategic market status, which means that they don't call it a monopolist, but they're edging toward it. So a label that brings stricter oversight and potentially forces deeper changes in the licensing rules are required. And this seems to be part of that global trend that I was talking about. So the regulators in Europe and the US are paying closer attention to how Microsoft is actually tying licensing to its cloud products, raising switching cost, making competitors less viable. A key example here, I also think, is Azure Hybrid Benefit. That solely, it benefits Microsoft customers, but it solely benefits Microsoft because it makes it less interesting to do the same thing that you were doing on your own premises or in a third-party hoster environment in the cloud of AWS and Google, but it just makes it very interesting to move it to Azure. So it's using its status, using its market dominance to effectuate basically how you want to make your migration to the cloud happen. So customers stand to benefit from this pressure that Microsoft is putting out into the market. But yeah, it raises the question if this should be allowed, if it should be possible, or if reforms should happen that go beyond just cosmetic concessions, which is basically what Microsoft is doing right now. So what does it mean for you if you're in Europe? For instance, the CSP-Hoster model could give you new ways to buy Windows Server, SQL Server licenses, especially if you're an up-and-coming starting hosting provider or you position yourself as a new cloud player out of the European market. This will help you in against the dominance of Microsoft. Make sure you assess the fine print, as concessions may always be limited or maybe cigar out of its own box. And for enterprises globally, this scrutiny signals a bigger shift as licensing economics are changing and regulators may push Microsoft to further open up its ecosystem. This, in fact, is also largely driven by the current macroeconomic fear out of the US. So what happens if the US all of a sudden states Microsoft Cloud is now operated only solely from the United States. All the data centers that they have built out in other regions in the world will currently be migrated to the US. So all data that you are hosting in the EU right now against a certain EU data boundary, who knows what will happen. This is a fear. We see it with our clients. They are actively asking each other already again, should we have moved everything to the cloud? Should we move it back? What would happen if we do? Can we still move it back? Does it make sense? Is it economically viable? Does it make financial sense? But does it also make sense from a compliancy perspective? Do we want to be dependent on one provider and one provider only? Big questions to ask. So the big takeaway, cloud licensing, not just a procurement decision anymore, regulatory, strategic, and a competitive issue even. Yeah, and that's basically it for this video. Microsoft licensing and entering a new phase. So it's not just shaped by commercial strategy, but by European sovereignty goals and regulatory pressure. The CISPE concessions are a start. What happened in the UK is a start. But the bigger question still remains, are they good enough to make real change? Are they good enough to reduce the sizable impact that one actor like Microsoft has on the entirety of the world? And at LicenseQ, we want to help organizations understand these implications and these shifts that are happening out in the market. That's why we write our newsletter as well, happily give our opinion free of charge. So if you don't already, go to our website, sign up to the newsletter. But First and foremost, we always help anyone with building the licensing strategy that keeps you compliant, cost efficient, and future-proof against your wants, needs, and requirements. If you are wondering how we do that and how sovereignty and these competitive trends will affect your Microsoft contracts, contact me, reach out, happy to help. That's what we're here for. Let's have that discussion and let's help you on your way. Thanks for this one.